Welcome to Spilling the Tea on Non-Monogamy with me, Gaz Darkwood. Spilling the Tea is a podcast dedicated to speaking with different people who practice non-monogamy in all of its forms to pull together as many different perspectives and experiences as possible, all into one place. In each episode, I'll be joined by a different guest to talk about their own non-monogamy experiences. I'm always looking for more guests, as without you, there would be no podcast. So if you would like to be a guest, please send an email to spillingtheteapodcast@outlook.com. In this episode, I am joined by Dana. Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Bit tired, but nothing new there.
That seems to be how most of us start our days, so you're not alone there. So to get us started, do you mind just telling me your age and how long you've been practicing non-monogamy?
Not at all. I am 31 and I have been practicing non-monogamy for nearly 3 years now. So I think, still fairly new.
Yeah. Do you class yourself as non-monogamous, or do you lean more towards like polyamory or relationship anarchy or anything else?
That's the questions. So, I mean, I tend to put myself under the ethical non-monogamy umbrella with, I guess there's polyamory aspects because I have two partners. I try not to have any hierarchy. I'm solo poly in the sense that I don't live with any of my partners. I try and practice relationship anarchy, and I think it's not as easy to do that as you hope. You aspire to that as an idea that you can treat everyone without hierarchy, and I think naturally your brain kind of does it anyway. And society is very geared up for hierarchy in regards to, family comes first and things like that. So I aspire to relationship anarchy, but I'd probably say I sit more within the solo poly kit.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And relationship anarchy is something that in my mind at least, I think I agree with all of that. I think that's kind of the way I like to do things, but practically it just doesn't work. But I think, I've married, I have children, I not only cohabiting, but we own a house together, that there has to be some sort of hierarchy because of there are things we're entangled in a way that I have to be home to be paying for the mortgage for the house that I share with my wife and my kids. So it's very difficult to be completely relationship anarchy in that sense. But in a whole, especially when it comes to say making new connections with people, I definitely think I lean more towards the relationship anarchy model in a way.
Yeah. And that's the thing with relationship anarchy, as you said, if for those that don't know what it is, it's not just in regards to your romantic relationships. It's meant to be sort of all the relationships that you can have, whether it's family, friends, your work colleagues, etc. The idea being, you treat people all on that kind of even keel, but it's not possible because who's your next of kin? Who's going to deal with your issues when you are unwell and you need someone to make your medical decisions for you? Who gets your stuff when you die? It's you have to make decisions. Society's geared up for you to have to make those decisions, and I have kind of struggled a bit with the almost a level of guilt of being I have a partner that I would like some of these things to be theirs, mostly because I'm not a primary. So one of my partners has a primary and a nesting partner who's also their civil partner. So I know that from that side of my relationship, there's hierarchy, which again makes it kind of harder to practice relationship anarchy because part of, one of my relationships is in a hierarchy. And I don't see a hierarchy as a bad thing. I don't feel any less respected. I understand that, we love each other in different ways to how they love their civil partner. And that's what's great about ethical non-monogamy and polyamory is all the different ways you can love each other and connect with each other and, make friends, etc. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of those things where, like you say, you don't practice hierarchy, but when someone else that's in your, let's say, polycule for ease of use does practice hierarchy, you're kind of within a hierarchy, even if you didn't want it to be, because you can't. So relationship anarchy, like you said, is more about like any relationship can kind of be anything and can have any level of importance. But you do kind of, with this particular partner you're talking about, there is obviously a ceiling there because it can't become anything because it is capped off by that hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly. You know, there's not the ability to go into to have an additional civil partnership or anything like that. So there is definitely that level. And you have to pick, if you want somebody to be, you know, if you share a house and you want to sort out your assets and all that kind of thing, you just have to choose. And it's just life.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way you'd have to do it anyway. You know, if you were, say, if you were single or just solo poly and you didn't have a partner that you wanted to live with and you wanted to live with friends, some friends may make good roommates, some friends may really not make good roommates. So those choices are always there, and those kind of variables anyway, even outside of romantic or sexual relationship.
100%. In the same way, there's family that I would have around my house, you know, staying over in a heartbeat if something went wrong for them. And there's others that I would desperately hope another one of the family picks them up.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I think is quite really good with, and probably relationship anarchy even more than polyamory, is the fact that any relationship can be anything, and you don't have to have that same sort of, just because you're in, let's say, a romantic or sexual relationship with someone doesn't mean you have to be there for them all the time, doesn't mean you have to come home to them every day, doesn't mean you have to spend any particular amount of time with them, doesn't mean you need to be there for them in specific situations. And there is something which I think is very freeing about that, but I think that scares a lot of people, because I think a lot of people are so used to the kind of monogamous programming where one person is your everything and will be there for you for everything. Having that kind of unknown of who is going to be there for me, why, if I haven't got that one person I can always rely on, then what have I got? I think that can panic people a bit.
I think it does. And, you know, humans are social animals, so there is an aspect of, you have your, you know, your group of people and the people that you hang out with, and all that kind of ability to trust and affinity bias. It all goes back to when we were nomadic tribes and all of that. So a lot of it is really drilled in. And then if you bring in the societal aspects that have been brought in, like monogamy and the nuclear family, which is quite a modern thing, the nuclear family, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, it was much more common to be in much bigger housing groups, you know, have multi-generational families, and you just don't really have that anymore.
No, yeah, definitely.
Not I would say in places like the UK, it's typically not, and many other, of course there are places around the world where it's really common to have multi-generational house. And kind of gone off topic from poly, but I guess like to me it's all interlinked in different ways, because how you choose to live your life, or how you feel works for you. Because I wouldn't say I've chosen to act on being polyamorous, and I feel like it's something that's kind of naturally within me, rather than saying it's like a lifestyle choice. I can't really quite explain what I mean.
I think I do know what you mean, and I just wanted to say before we get onto that is that you say about different places around the world not having the whole nuclear family aspect, but there are also certain places in the world where like polygamy and polyandry are still really big practices. We don't hear about them as much, being, you know, white Westerners, but they still happen, and it's common. And in those places, it's normal. It's not frowned upon. It's not shunned. But again, those aspects seem to be very, let's say, closed. This is my own words, closed-minded in a way, because they're still very much nothing's allowed outside of this thing. Whereas with like polyamory, relationship anarchy, non-monogamy as a whole, generally, is that all doors are open in every direction. Just not like, okay, you're all open with each other, but it doesn't go any further than that. That you're staying closed within that thing.
Yeah, exactly. That, as you said, there are loads of different sort of relationship models that happen around the world under different labels, etc. I think we're going to get on a whole different thing here, but one of the things that really annoys me about that is how they're typically quite sexist. It's quite often the man that can have multiple partners or wives, etc. And And
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah,
yeah,
it does
you very rarely
seem
get
to
it
be
the
very
other
much
way.
gendered towards the man's benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, I'm slightly biased as a woman, and I wholeheartedly disagree.
Yeah, I definitely. But then, I mean, and maybe that's in certain areas of the world, but there are definitely, and I'm sure we know people, let's say women or female presenting people who will have like multiple male partners or multiple male submissives in some cases. So like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
does kind of turn that idea on its head to an extent. Like, but again, I think that's a bigger thing of non-monogamy and let's say polyamory relationship as a whole, that there are more options that anyone can do it their own way.
Yeah, and as long as you're being, I mean, I was going to say as long as you're being ethical about it. That sounds really judgy. I very much work, I think it's really important to be ethical, and, I'd like my partners to be ethical in regards to our monogamy. I don't want it to be, there's nothing worse than receiving a message from someone being like, oh, can you be discreet? And you're like, oh, discreet, code for I'm cheating on my significant other. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that other person. I'm not going to, be a home wrecker or whatever. And then at the same time, that's my own opinion and my feelings. It doesn't sit comfortably with me. And there are people who are okay doing that, and that's their choice.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that, because to me, discreet is one of the biggest red flags. If I see that on someone's profile, I nope the fuck out of there so quickly. It doesn't matter what the rest of the profile says or how interesting the person seems or how attractive they are or how much we have in common or any of that. If I see the word discreet, I'm done. Goodbye. Wash my hands. Done.
Yeah. Unless, if it comes along later and it's because of their work or something, then I completely understand. But normally, it doesn't normally mean because I'm in the teaching profession and I don't want the teenagers I teach to find me or anything. Actually, no, it's normally because they're up to no good, and yeah, that's not my thing.
Yeah, definitely. And that's like you said about the whole practicing ethical non-monogamy, and the ethical is a big word there that does a lot of actual heavy lifting, because the difference to me between if you say to someone you're non-monogamous, say to if it was a monogamous person, they don't understand what you do, that you have sex with multiple people and everyone's all okay with it, that's fine. Like, yes, but I do it ethically. Whereas if I mention what actual unethical non-monogamy is, that's called cheating. And most monogamous people, even though they may not agree with it, they understand it because it's been so normalized that people cheat and people have affairs. They can get their head around that, but they can't get their head around ethical non-monogamy, whereby you're not cheating, you are still having multiple partners, but everyone knows about it.
It is really funny when because there's two kinds of people when it comes to talking about ethical non-monogamy. There's the people that are really intrigued, they want to learn more. They're not really that judgy with it. They're just kind of, they know you as who you are as a person. It doesn't really change much about how they view you. They're just intrigued. It's like learning another culture. It's something interesting and to have some awareness over it. And then there's the people that are just either really judgy or just cannot get their head around it. And some of the questions you get when my partner went to have their civil partnership, I was talking to a work colleague and they went, oh, so are you going to stop seeing them then? And I'm like, no. Yeah, but they're basically getting married. Well, yeah. And they're still going to be my partner. Yeah, but they're like legally they just could not get their head around it. Like, yeah, I know. And that's their partner knows that their other partner knows that I exist. We hang out, we have dinner together sometimes. We go to events together. It's we all know we exist. It's, I stay over. There's nothing, it's just for them, it just blows their mind because we have been so programmed and fed this message our whole life, books, television, movies, culture, religion. It's two people. And if you step out of that, it's really bad. If you look at the law around what marriage is in the UK, it's I can't remember the exact quote, but it's basically to the exclusion of all others. And that is the main thing about all the ways that what blows their mind basically is they've been programmed this way their whole lives. And I always think it's hilarious how many movies would be so much more interesting if instead of having to pick which guy the woman wanted to date, if she just dated both.
Oh, there've been so many things that I've watched that I've been like, there's a simple fucking solution to this love triangle bullshit, and it's just polyamory, like non-monogamy, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, all of this could be solved so easily, and it never happens. But you're completely right, and that's something that I always say is that we've all, like, I see it as we've been programmed. We've been programmed since birth to believe that monogamy is the only way of doing things, and that's the norm, that's the default setting, and that it's wrong to change to anything else. And that is perpetuated with film and TV and books and everything, where you always get, like you say, it's normally always a heterosexual monogamous couple that will have children and they live together, and that's it, and there's nothing else. The only caveat you get to that is that sometimes you get that one of the adults in a relationship is having an affair. And again, that's normalized. So non-monogamy has been normalized, but unethical non-monogamy. People see cheating and hear about affairs, and that's so normal to them, they don't bat an eyelid. But if they hear you say, oh, I'm ethically non-monogamous, I've got multiple different partners, their fucking minds are blown.
Exactly. And going back to the cheating comment, it's almost to the point where there is a whole scale of what people class as cheating, which is bonkers. You know, there'll be people that will go on about how, oh, you know, he was liking other girls' Instagram posts. I think that's cheating, or, you know, can't be trusted. Or, you know, she's been talking to an ex. Yeah, but actually she's known that ex since she was 4. Like, there was a whole other life before they dated, and they're now friends. That's not cheating. That's, if you know about it, it's not cheating. And loads of things like that. All the way from, is just flirting with someone cheating if it's just, you know, if you're out and you're at a pub and someone starts flirting with you and you flirt back a bit, is that cheating? And the fact that there's so many different opinions on this like scale of what is classed as cheating that blows my mind more than anything. The fact that, as you said, it's so normalized that you can sit there and go, here is the scale of the different types of cheating, and here is where people draw different lines, which in itself is, well, as you said, it's non-monogamy, but more socially accepted non-monogamy.
Yeah, exactly. And something that you just said there about where people will draw the lines, I think those lines about what is classed as cheating are all based on the individual's own levels of insecurity, because some people, it's not on the person that's cheating, it's not on the person that's doing it at all, it's on about the person that's being cheated on, what they class as cheating. And like you say, oh, they flirted with another person, that's cheating. Why? What has changed in your life? What has changed in your relationship with them? What has changed in their attitude towards you? Has anything actually changed? Or are you just insecure that you think this other person may be more attractive than you, or maybe more interesting to you than your partner or something? The best thing you can do in that situation is just communicate with your partner. But this idea of like, oh, you did this thing I don't like, therefore it's cheating. Is it though? Like, I've read things online where people like they get upset when their partners watch porn. And I'm like, oh my fucking god, you don't like the fact that your partner looks at their phone when you're not there. Fucking hell, they could be looking at absolutely anything. They could be watching videos of fucking shark attacks, or they could be watching videos of people cleaning swimming pools. What difference does it make what they're watching in their spare time when you're not there? It doesn't affect you in any way. Like, that sort of thing really blows my mind.
And then that moves in itself into like a really unethical, almost coercive kind of relationship style, because you're then, if you're demanding that an individual should be doing certain things and can only do things, why are you putting control on something like this? Like, what are you gaining from that? And it's terrifying. It's there is a lot in the world when it comes to relationships that you just read about and you think, oh my god, I can't believe that that someone's even put this on the internet and told people, or that you have this opinion. It's bonkers.
It's crazy, some of the things you read. I read one the other day that someone was upset because their partner was masturbating behind their back. They're like, hang on, so in their spare time when you're not around, they're doing this thing which doesn't affect you in any way. Like, I could understand to an extent if they were like, you know, can you please stop masturbating at the dinner table? And then but they still carried on doing it. I would be on your side there. I would be completely on your side. But what they do in their spare time without you, and it's something that doesn't affect anyone else, only them, trying to control that is just, I just can't wrap my head around it.
Oh, and seeing like vibrators as a threat. It's probably one of my favourite takes on the internet.
It's
like,
fucking hilarious.
She doesn't need a dildo, she's got me, and it's like, yeah, but you're not always there.
Yeah, exactly. And this, and I've heard this thing as well of sizes of like, I don't mind her having a dildo, but it's 2 inches bigger than I am. So therefore, like, why does she need it? It makes me feel insecure. I'm like, but it's still just a bit of rubber that she has to control by herself. How the fuck do you think that compares to being an actual another human being there? Like, why the hell is that a threat to you? If you think the only thing that you've got going for you is that, nothing else about you is going to beat those extra 2 inches on the size of a fucking dildo. Again, that's massive insecurity, and that's your own thing to deal with.
Oh, brilliant.
Okay.
I've not come across that one. That's really, that would, I think, is the kind of thing that if I read on the internet, I'd absolutely guffaw out loud, because it just, there's definitely a level of insecurity, and there's a huge amount wrapped up in masculinity, and you see it a lot, particularly the more extreme side of it that you see these days. That's a lot easier to find on the internet than it was a lot, in the younger days of the internet. That kind of incel mentality and all that kind of thing, and it's quite terrifying, actually, how easy it is to come across people, in particular men, who are just, they just seem to view you as an object and nothing else, and it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Although one thing that I will say, and this isn't in defense of them, because I am constantly calling out people for being fucking incels on the internet, and quite often I get told off for it because obviously the incel friends then jump on me. But one thing that I think has fucked things up for people, and let's say kids, but younger people, maybe teenagers, compared to at least when I was a child, that everyone has smartphones. They have it in their pocket. They can, in a couple of clicks, they are watching the most graphic, extreme, hardcore porn they've ever seen. And when I was younger, I wasn't really seeing that sort of thing, and nowhere near in that abundance, until I was already kind of sexually active myself. So I knew that, okay, this is all fantasy. This isn't real. This isn't what it's actually like in real life. Whereas I think that younger people now, they see this stuff before they become sexually active, and they have no frame of reference. They just think, oh, this is how it is. Like, women are just objects to be used by men, because that's how most porn is done, is to appeal to men in that way.
Yeah. And then you go into, even if you then come across like porn with 2 women, it's clearly very geared up to be.
Exactly.
You're watching it like, hang on a minute, nobody has nails that long when they're actually doing stuff like that. What's going on? This was not created by queer people.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
queer people. This was created by straight people for straight people.
Yeah, and that's usually what it is. I think, and this isn't a defense of incels at all, but I can kind of understand how a younger mind could be warped into thinking that reality is a certain way just based on their surroundings. And I think that maybe is part of the problem, but I think there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, it's in the same way that all our biases, what they're having is what they've been taught, the stereotypes and assumptions based on what they've consumed, that they've been able to access far easier than others have. I think it results in more extremes on either side, really. Because if you think about it, before social media, most of your, certainly like your news, came from one source, or, maybe a couple of sources. For years, you had channel, BBC One, BBC Two, like TV. That was it. Those are your 3 channels. And now you can get all these streaming sites and 200 channels, and there's YouTube and there's Twitch and other streaming platforms are available. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, I'm really grateful that I didn't have to go through school with that much social media. Facebook came out around when I was about 13, and it was still, you know, at that point it was just you tagging your friends in it and logging into your friends' Facebook stuff and making stupid comments and embarrassing them and poking each other. That's all I really remember Facebook when I was a teen. I don't remember it being used, as you see now, about it being used to bully people and berate people. And yeah, definitely grateful that I've missed that. It's nice though, hitting my sort of poly days with access to loads of information though.
Yeah, that is one thing. And yeah, I think like social media to me when I was a teenager was literally social media. It was keeping in touch with your friends. It was being able to see what your friends are doing, and when they can post pictures, you can see them and things like that. Whereas now it's all just, you know, social media is one of the biggest tools in the propaganda machine that does spread propaganda and create echo chambers. And it's very simple to, if you start reading about a certain thing, you're only going to read things from that perspective because the way the algorithms work. And then you are stuck in an echo chamber. You don't see that there are other ways of doing everything or other views, and you just get stuck thinking this way is the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Which again is what I think has kind of been done to all of us with monogamy since birth, and we just don't know it. It's not been done in such a sinister way, but it has kind of worked as the same thing.
Yeah, it completely is, because the minute you start on social media liking other stuff, the algorithms start kicking all these things at you. So, you know, you start off in one polyamory group on Facebook, and then all of a sudden Facebook's recommending all these other ones, and it just spirals from there, really. And the algorithms on things like your videos and your reels and stuff, it does the same thing. You all of a sudden you'll get videos where it will go, if you're watching this video, you're a queer polyamorous female, and you're like, holy crap, this is terrifying. The algorithm has got me down to a T. And then it'll be like, and you also like The Sims, and you're like, oh my god, you're in my phone. Get out.
Exactly, and that sort of stuff is scary. And like I say, it creates these especially when people use, and I think younger people now do use social media as their news source. They don't turn on the news, they don't read newspapers, they don't necessarily read articles. They'll just read whatever pops up on their, say, Facebook feed, and that's very much tailored to the stuff that they've clicked on before. If they're interested in, let's say, football, and they read a lot of football articles, odds are their feed is going to be full of football-related news, because that's what the algorithm is saying. Oh, you're into this. Let's show you more of it. But if you start to, and like for instance for you, if you've clicked on a few different polyamory groups, you get loads of polyamory. But for some people, if they read one, let's say, incel-leaning post from someone, then they're probably going to start seeing more of that. And before long, their feed is full of that, and to them, it's important. It's a big deal because that's all they're seeing. They don't realise that actually, no, the algorithm is making sure that's all they see.
Well, it's important to you go out of your way to find other people and other views. And I will make a point not to follow those people, because I don't ever want someone being like, you follow so-and-so. And it's like, yeah, but it's like, you know, keep tabs on them. You know what your enemy is doing. But there will be specific people I will go out of my way to search up on social media and on the news to find out, you know, what's being said, and then go a bit down the rabbit hole in the comments and see what the views are, etc. Because even if they're views I disagree with, it's very important to see what those views are. And so the stuff that gets said about non-monogamies, it's not nice. I mean, it's not nice when it's anything that you disagree with, but when it's the way that you live and you love, then it can be really horrible. You know, the assumption that, like, kids in polyamory, I think, is one of the worst ones. You see, oh, you know, they're going to be destroying the kids, and that's what they're doing. Is, you know, that's not normal. They're gonna, you know, they're gonna need therapy. And it's like, well, who doesn't need therapy from the way that they were raised?
Yeah.
And then you just end up in like a really toxic debate again over what is right and what is wrong. Whereas, unless it's killing people or is really unethical, then just let people be. if people want to be monogamous, let them be monogamous. If people want to be polyamorous, let them be polyamorous. If they want to have open relationships, let them do that. That's, just, does it matter to you? Is it causing you issues? No, then cool, carry on.
Yeah, unfortunately, some people do like to make it seem like everything is a personal affront against them, no matter what it is. And I'm vegan. I've been vegan for I think 7 or 8 years, and I still now when I don't talk about it often because I don't care. It's not anyone's business. It doesn't mean anything to me. The sort of food that I eat or don't eat isn't any different to what anyone else does, really. But you still get people that get defensive about it and act as if like it's an attack on them. Like, oh yeah, I don't. If I say, oh yeah, I don't eat meat. Oh well, I eat meat, but blah blah blah, and try and back it up. And I'm like, I don't care. Why? It's not an attack against you. Just let me do my. I'm not telling you what you should do. Can you just leave me alone and let me do my own thing?
Yeah. That defensiveness does come from, in my personal experience, people who aren't as nice as you.
Wow.
The minute you mention anything about farming or anything particular, so I guess like the keyboard vegan warriors would be the ones. I mean, who come in and quite rightly they have those opinions, and you just get attacked, and it's. And I understand where it's coming from. They're really passionate and they really care, and it's coming from a really good place. It's just not. It's not being communicated in a way that's going to remotely make me want to live that way.
And I've had people like that I know that have found out that I'm vegan at some point through whatever means, and oh, you're vegan? Yeah. Oh, that's weird. You never mentioned it. You never talk about it. I'm like, no. What? Why would? And actually, you'll find that most vegans. There's that weird joke that like, how do you know someone's vegan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. And I know quite a few vegans. So I have a few vegan friends. No one ever fucking talks about it because it doesn't matter. When are people ever talking about like what they're having for dinner or what they're not having? Generally, we eat all the same, mostly the same food anyway. What difference does it make? And then people get defensive about it. That like, oh, but you don't drink cow's milk. No, I drink soya milk and oat milk. I still, I still drink a cup of tea every day, the same as you. I still drink coffee, the same as you. What is the difference?
It only matters if you're inviting them round, and you need to know so that you don't just, serve them up a massive steak, and cheesy mashed potato or whatever. Like, you don't want doing it from that point of view. And also, depending on the kind of relationship you have, if you're going to go down other routes, and if you're exploring, for example, like kink and that, probably best not to hit them with a leather flogger if they're to the point where it's that side of veganism as well as just the diet. That's the only time it's important.
Exactly. Other than that, just let people do that. And it's funny that you bring up kink as well, because like lots of different people can have lots of different kinks, and I could be here talking to you now and we're having a normal conversation, and it could turn out that you've got lots of different kinks that I personally have no interest in, and maybe I don't even agree with. Who fucking cares? It doesn't make this conversation any different. That's irrelevant to us talking to each other now. So the same way as like what milk I have in my tea makes no difference. So what does it matter? Why do people take those things with a level of importance when you can just talk to someone and you don't need to know every aspect of their life? It makes no difference to anything.
Yeah, exactly. And if it steers into something that you don't feel comfortable about, just be honest and don't do it in a harsh way. Just be like, do you know what, this I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable right now. This isn't my thing. Do you mind if we change the topic? And if the person keeps digging in, well, why do you feel uncomfortable? Then that's when you're kind of like, hang on a minute, I'm putting up a boundary here for my comfort, for the benefit of this like friendship, relationship, whatever. Just let's back off a little.
Yeah, and this brings me back a little bit actually, but it's still relevant. That something that I say quite a lot, and I'm sure I've said on previous episodes of this podcast, that I think a lot of the core things we learn with maybe non-monogamy, but I'm thinking more specifically polyamory, are things that actually everyone could do with learning. And I think one of those things is communication, learning to communicate with people. Like I said, people getting upset that their partner has a sex toy, and then going and posting about it online. And so often I see posts online that are, oh, my partner did this, what should I do? I'm like, why? What do you mean, what should you do? Fucking talk to them. Why are you asking strangers on the internet before you talk to your partner directly? That's fucking crazy. But also another thing is I think with non-monogamy and maybe more so with polyamory and relationship anarchy, that you learn that actually a lot of, say, insecurities and potential negative feelings that you could have are all your own, and you
100%.
learn how to kind of be able to look in at yourself to manage these things and to ask yourself questions and to learn how to deal with things by yourself, in and of yourself, and realizing that, like, for instance, let's just use, for example, jealousy. If your partner does something that makes you jealous, well, they haven't done anything wrong. That's on you. That's your feelings, and you need to learn why you feel that way and how you're going to manage it and what you can do about it to potentially prevent it happening in future. And then you communicate that with your partner, why you felt that way. Not that they've done anything wrong, but explain why, and maybe if you can make changes in future so that you don't get that feeling again. All those things, if every person on the planet learned those sort of things, I think it would make such a big difference, especially in terms of, like, tolerance, like we were just talking about, how people could be intolerant. Oh, you do this thing, I think that's weird, I don't agree with it, you're wrong. Well, actually, no, just think about yourself and yourself as an individual. Why does that make you feel bad? Why does the fact that someone's vegan or this person has this particular thing, why does that make you get defensive? What is it about you? You know, what's that saying about you? Is it actually the other person, who are you projecting a feeling that you're experiencing onto this person, when actually it's not them at all? It's not what they've done. It's just the way that you have kind of reacted to it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the jealousy one's really interesting, because people will sit there and go like, oh, do you not get jealous? Or, oh, I would just be so jealous all the time. It's like, hello. That's, you know, it's a human emotion. We feel it, and it's a horrible feeling to feel it, because if you are self-aware enough, you realize, oh shit, I'm about to have to go do more work and work out where this is coming from and why I'm feeling this way. And for me, it's quite often wrapped up in either like FOMO, fear of missing out. So if I identify as a switch, and if I've not had a lot of, if I've not had a lot of submissive time, and I'm watching my partner get a lot of submissive time, I kind of, you end up with this, it's not resentment, or in that sense, because resentment is a really strong word. It's just kind of like, this is like, it's not fair. When's my turn? I'm jealous that you're getting all this submissive time and I haven't had it in ages, and I want this, and then there's that bit of you that's like, and now in my head I'm coming across like a little bratty teenager, and kind of reel that in, and it's having that ability to go, okay, yeah, this is how I'm feeling, and I can either go out of my way to find someone, but then for me it has to, and this is the case for a lot of people, it's got to be someone I really trust, it's got to be someone I've got a good relationship built with. So actually, okay, yeah, this is the feeling, and I'm just going to have to live with it and not take it out on my partner or anything. And then there's other types of jealousy where it's wrapped up in, there's fear that they're going to take them away from you, which can come from various guises in the past. And it's just being honest and talking about potentially that trauma or the things that have led to you feeling that way, and getting reassurance without being too needy. Because if you come across as, or if you need that reassurance all the time, it becomes a burden on your partner, and that's not fair. But occasionally, also having that awareness, turning around and going, I know this is ridiculous, okay, and this is how I'm feeling right now, and I just need a little bit of reassurance, please. And it always comes across so much better. Or other types of jealousy I have will be wrapped up in self-worth. So if I see my partner, having luck with people who I deem to be more attractive than me, that feeds on my insecurities, which I'm well aware of.
That's a big thing as well, I think, with jealousy. And this, I kind of touched on this earlier, but a lot of what makes people jealous is their own insecurities, which is why 100%. You can't then project that feeling onto someone else. And you kind of admitted it there, that that if you feel jealous because of that, it's not on what your partner's doing, it is your own insecurities, and it's your own thing to come to terms with and deal with.
It's hard to do though, because it's not something that's really taught. I've been in therapy private therapy for 13 years. I've got various mental health conditions. So, emotionally unstable personality disorder, trichotillomania, which is hair pulling disorder, obsessive hair pulling disorder, dermatillomania, which is skin picking disorder. So I've spent a lot of time doing self-reflection and self-awareness and building my emotional intelligence through having that privilege of being able to access therapy. And then that's something I've prioritized in my life to the expense of other things, because it's been such a benefit. And I'm able to have much better connections with people, whether it's in a relationship or it's a family member, a friend, a work colleague. Being able to, when you get that email at work and it's clear that this work colleague is pissy as hell, and having that moment, instead of firing back an email where you're like, you look at it and you go, what is happening for this person right now? Like, it's not me. I know it's not me. This interaction's out of nowhere. So this is a them problem. Maybe I need to give them a bit of space, or maybe I need to actually drop them a call and just have a chat, or see if they want to go for a coffee, and just because clearly something's up for them. And I think we are too quick to react as opposed to reflect, process, and then communicate. And I'm not going to sit here and say I get it perfect. Oh, hell freaking no. There are some times where I am probably one of the most vile human beings on the planet. And I think we all have that in us, because it's just, if you're tired and this happened, that has happened, it's the straw that broke the camel's back. You're going to have a moment where you're not your most perfect. Not that anyone ever is. There's no such thing. So it's it can be hard doing that reflection. And if you haven't been taught it and you haven't been given the tools, or nobody's guided you, you just go through life blindly. It's just the next thing, and you don't ever learn what's wrong. And I think that's really a shame, because there are people who are just missing out on having such wonderful connections with others, that they're just not able to deeply connect on that level, because they can't reflect within themselves enough. And it's a shame.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is. And I think that's one of those things, a big key thing with this sort of stuff, with non-monogamy in any of its forms, is that self-reflection. Because I think a lot of people jump into things, they get excited, like, oh, how many notches can I put on my bedpost, and things fall apart for them quite quickly a lot of the times, because they didn't take the time to do the work on themselves first. And I would always say to anyone, like, most of the work that you need to put in is on yourself. It's not about writing a dating profile. It's not about time management and arranging dates. It's not about how many people you can see in a given week, or how many notches you can carve on your bedpost. It's more about doing the work on yourself to see what you can actually manage, and what you can, in terms of building up your communication as well. Like, you need to be able to communicate if you're not feeling great about something. Not only think to yourself, why am I not feeling great? What is this? Is it me? Don't project it onto someone else. Then also be able to communicate to another person to explain why it is you're feeling that way, and what help you'd like from them about it. I think a lot of people don't learn that. So in terms of, like, when we talk about jealousy, if someone's jealous because their partner says that they flirted with someone when they were out having a drink at the weekend, then they attack their partner for it, because they can't turn inwardly and look at it about themselves and manage it for themselves. They have to have a target. They have to aim it somewhere, so they project it onto the person that did the thing, even though what they did isn't necessarily wrong, and they're not responsible for your own feelings. You are responsible for your own feelings. And when people don't learn how to manage that, it's always going to cause problems.
100%. And it's not easy when society teaches you that these emotions are bad. I wouldn't say that I don't believe that any emotion is a bad emotion. How you feel is how you feel. It's how you act, which is what makes that bad. So if I'm feeling jealous and I take it out on something, it's not the jealousy that's bad, it's my actions that are bad. If I'm feeling angry and I decide to scream at someone, it's not my anger that's bad. It's valid to be feeling angry. People might argue that your reasons for feeling angry aren't valid. And that's a whole different conversation. At the end of the day, though, your feelings are your feelings. You can to a degree help how you feel. If I do enough of my therapy techniques, I can kind of change how I'm feeling. I might still be angry about something, but I'm not angry to the point where I feel like I want to flip my desk and throw things through a wall. It's angry from I can have a measured and sensible conversation about this because I'm not clouded by this anger. I can think things through and communicate why I'm feeling angry. Whereas a lot of people just don't have that insight, and a huge amount of ethical non-monogamy is having that insight, because you are going to come across, you are going to feel jealous, and you're going to be feeling a multitude of emotions. You're going to be horrified at yourself for feeling it. And then having to do that self-reflection and realizing that this is on you and what can you do to support yourself, and then trying to find ways to do things where it doesn't put restrictions on your partner, because then that starts to fall into the ethical side of things. Like, I'm feeling this way, so you can no longer do this is not, in my opinion, a remotely good way of going about and doing things. Sometimes you might need it for the initial moment, just like a buffer zone whilst you kind of work things out. And I think, it's more acceptable in a temporary situation, but sort of perma bans are a bit alarming.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this is one of those things where, and what I'd want to say to people that are starting out non-monogamy, I think people just get really excited and go, right, I want to dive in head first and do all of these things. And I'll always say, no, take the time, do your work on yourself. If you're in a relationship, talk to your partner, communicate. You can never have too much communication, and you can never have too much self-reflection. And the way that I like to word it is, I'd say, be a tortoise, don't be a hare. Because the hare is going to go sprinting out of the gate, diving in head first, and the hare doesn't win. The hare ends up just causing problems. Things go wrong. They run out of energy, or they run out of, or just run into problems that they can't get round. The tortoise takes its time. It may take its time. It may take longer. You may not get that gratification you want as soon as you want it, but you will reach the finish line when the hare's already tripped up way before the finish line. So what's the best position to be in, really?
And do research as well. I think it's, there's loads of really good books and resources out there, and people on social media. And I can't really remember them all. But there's books like The Ethical Slut and things like that, which they are a good way of introducing you to all the different aspects and the terminology and all the things that you might come across, and how, what's the difference between ethical and not ethical, or unethical. And that's a really important thing to do as well. And then whilst also doing that, be totally aware that you are going to aspire to a certain thing, and life is just going to fuck you over. And whatever you're aspiring
definitely.
to is not going to go that way, because everyone holds like kitchen table polyamory, which, for those listening, if you don't know what that is the idea that all of your partners get on and you can literally have dinner together and that sort of thing. Is the best way of doing polyamory, or the eventual point where you can all buy a massive mansion and basically create a massive polycule and live on a ranch. It's like the other thing. But actually you will come across views where it feels like there's pressure to aspire to those things, and you're going to come across people who they just, that ethical non-monogamy means that you're going to have a partner that just doesn't want to do that. They don't want to know your other partners. They might want to know to the point where, they can see them in public and be polite, but they're not going to want to go and spend a Saturday at, at Legoland with you, etc. Whereas you're going to have those that you say, oh, I'm doing this, and they're super excited to join you and your partner. I've recently had some really kind of affirming moments with a couple of friends, where I've been invited to dinner, and I said, oh, can I bring one of my partners? And they're like, bring both. And I was like, oh my God, cool. And then my other friend, my best friend, said, oh, I'm having a garden party. Inviting one of my partners to something like 6 months in advance is useless. It's not going to work. I'll have to remind them in about a week before it. But I was like, they said +1's welcome. And I was like, +2's ? And they're like, of course, the more the merrier. And that's just really nice, having that moment. And And for my partners, and the point of this is, you know, I have partners who will spend time together and it's really nice. And then I have a play partner who has never met my other partners, and I've been with him for coming up for 2 years now. So it's just, yeah, it's different. It's individual needs and trying to make it as equitable as possible within what each individual requires in order for them to have a satisfactory, ethical non-monogamy. I want to say journey, but yeah, no, journey's right, because I think it's always a journey.
I think people do often use the term journey, but then I've also heard a lot of people say, like, oh, I don't like using the term journey because that implies that there's like a finish line, like you're heading towards something specific, whereas really it's an ongoing thing. But I think it, you know, for sake of ease, it does work.
Yeah, but because if you say like the ethical non-monogamy hamster wheel, in the sense that it just keeps going, that kind of sounds negative.
Well, I think I'd actually prefer, if you're using that analogy, I had hamsters when I was a kid, and we also had, not only did they have a wheel in their cage, when it came to cleaning out their cage, we had to take the hamster out and put it somewhere, so it went in this plastic ball that it could roll around the house in. It could go in every direction. So I think the polyamory hamster ball is kind of a better, because that can go in any direction. It can come back round on itself. It can start going to the north. It can start going south. It can turn around completely and go any direction at any time. And it's just, you know, if you plotted a chart of all the movements it made, it would just end up like one big fucking scribbled mess. There's no straight line. There's no start point. There's no end point. You can't differentiate anything. It's just a big fucking scribble.
There you go, the ethical non-monogamy hamster ball. I think we've started something, and I think we need to get that out into onto the internet so people know. I think.
Yeah, maybe we need to create some memes and get some t-shirts printed. Right, so I think this brings us quite nicely onto some questions, actually. So one thing I want to ask you is, what have been some of the most rewarding aspects of practicing non-monogamy for you? And you don't have to say absolutely everything, but if you want to give like just the top one.
For me, it's actually having a sensible, stable, respectful, secure relationship. When I was practicing monogamy, it would always get to like the 6-month mark and I would get really, really itchy feet. I could never get my head around how, you know, if I was away somewhere and I met someone and I was attracted to them, like, well, just why couldn't I have a one-night stand? I just like, I'm still coming home. You're the person I still want to build my life with. You're the person, you know, at that point that, you know, I was so programmed that I want to live with, I want to get married, I want to have kids. And very much now, I'm very much of a view that there's the majority of that I do not want to do. And it's just, yeah, I just could not hold a long relationship down. Like, until I went into ethical non-monogamy, the longest relationship I held down was between the ages of 14 and 16, like 14 and a half and 16 and a half. You know, I was a teenager. Yeah. And then after that, if I held relationships down, they were very rocky. There were lots of breakups. My friends used to joke about me having a rep for having sex with the ex, because I'd break up for a bit, go and do what I needed to do with somebody else, or whatever it was that I felt like I was missing and I needed that I wasn't getting from this relationship. And then I'd be like, oh, but I miss that person. And I go back and we'd start up again. And then the same issues would rear their head and we wouldn't do anything about it. And we'd carry on. And it was just such a pattern that I hadn't really realised as a thing. And I just kind of got to the stage where I was like, maybe I'm just not built for having relationships. And I wasn't really aware of ethical non-monogamy. And so in my head, I was like, well, this is the only option and this option doesn't work. So I'm actually much happier to become, you know, the crazy cat lady that people refer to. And that's so, yeah, having that. I mean, I'm now in a relationship that's lasted 18 months, another one that's lasted 15 months. And that's just, it blows my mind for kids before then, and with no breakup. That would never happen.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because that brings me back actually to something that we started talking about very early on, and I said that we'll come back to it, and then we just didn't come back to it. But something that you said was that it doesn't feel like you're doing polyamory. It just feels like it comes kind of natural to you, and that's something that I've always felt as well. Like, I don't feel like polyamory isn't something that I'm doing. That's just who I am. I'm just built that way. And I didn't know it for most of my life. I didn't realize that it was even an option. But once I started learning about it, and even, to very recently, I still look back at certain things from my life and I'm like, oh yeah, looking back at that was from a polyamory standpoint. And I just didn't know. Like one simple example is that when I was 14, 15, my first like proper girlfriend, I broke up with her basically not because there was anything wrong with the relationship, not because there was anything wrong with her, but because the things that I was doing from her, the things that I was getting from her, I also wanted from other people. And, but as a monogamous brain, I didn't realize that I could have both. I was like, well, I have to break up with her if I want this from other people. Whereas really it was, if I'd known, I would have been like, it would have been polyamory and I would have stayed in that relationship with her while exploring other options. I just didn't know that was the case. And something that, so, sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, and it empathize with that, because that's definitely why my relationship split. Because the minute I had the gut, I would sit there and go, do you think we could just sleep with other people as well? And the minute you ask somebody who is monogamous, can we sleep with other people? The majority of the time, the relationship starts to tank from that moment. You do hear about the couples that were like, yeah, we've recently opened up our marriage and it's difficult and you know what, we're enjoying it. And you're like, my God, you are the myth. It does exist. I can't believe it. And then otherwise, in all my experience, the minute you ask for any kind of non-exclusive exclusivity, despite the fact you're still exclusive within your own relationship, it just goes down the toilet.
Yeah, and I constantly see posts online about people that are saying like, oh, my partner has asked for an open relationship. I don't know what to think about it. And there's so many people in the comments saying like, leave them, the relationship's over, it's dead. I would never, as soon as a partner mentioned anything about an open relationship to me, they'd be straight out the door and all this stuff. I'm like, wow, the level of insecurity there, you won't even stop and consider it and think about it and think about where your partner's coming from and maybe be open to communicating it with them. They just shut down as soon as that's even tabled. I think is crazy.
Or people look at it and go,
something.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, don't worry. Well,
no, go carry on.
Or people look at it and go, oh, that means I can get certain things that I want. Oh, that means I can get the threesome that I've always wanted, or I might be able to get that gangbang that I've always wanted to have. And then again, things don't work that way. You get less interest in your partner or vice versa. And that then fuels the insecurities and the jealousy and the anger. And then you're back to needing to communicate and do the reflection. And
yeah, I think a lot of as well that happens, especially when it's like couples established monogamous relationships opening up, is that one person will think, or maybe both people will think, oh yeah, this is great because this means I get to do all these other things. I'll get to explore all these other things. I'll get to have sex with more people. Brilliant. I'm up for it. I'm excited. They don't take the time to stop and think what it'll be like for them when their partner is doing things with other people. And
100%.
Actually, that's when it becomes a problem, because they're like, yeah, brilliant, I get to have sex with loads of people. As soon as their partner has sex with one person, they break down. They can't handle it. They don't know what to do. I'm like, well, that was always part of it. Why weren't you thinking about that from the beginning? Because you're only thinking about the potential positives for yourself. You didn't think about the potential positives for your partner. You didn't think about the potential negatives for yourself. And these are all things you should be thinking about before you start exploring any of it.
Yeah, exactly. We're back to do your research.
Yeah, and something I was going to say before, which is, one of my friends said this quite recently, and it's kind of stuck in my head since, but he said when he was at university, I'm not naming names, but there's a good chance he may listen to this, so if you're listening, you know who you are, and just know that this has been sticking in my head for a while since you said it. He was at university and he was in a house share with 6 other people. So there were 7 of them in the house, and out of the 6, there were 3 sets of couples. So there was a couple, and then him. And he said basically the 7 of them were kind of inseparable. They'd do everything together. They'd go out and socialize together. They'd go out drinking together. Yeah. They'd sit at home drinking together. They'd have dinner together. They'd sit and watch films together. They'd play video games together. But as soon as it came to sex, all the individual couples went back to their own rooms. And then he was just sat on his own because he was single at the time. And he thought, why is this the case? Why is it that we do all these other things together and we're all completely happy, and it's all fine. We're all crossing paths in different ways, different dynamics within this 7. There's all these things. As soon as it's sexual, that gets closed off. Why can we not have that bit be a big group social thing as well? And that kind of hit home to me in a way, because that, like, I had similar thoughts when I was younger. Before I knew that polyamory or non-monogamy was really a thing, where I was like, why are we not just doing these things together? Why are these things all separate? Like, we're all hanging out together as friends, but then why are we not also having this aspect of something we all do together as well? Why does that have to be separate? And that's, something that I didn't understand at the time. And it was really kind of refreshing for me to hear that someone else had had those similar experiences before, later in life, learning about polyamory. Like, they already kind of had that rooted within themselves without actually knowing it. And it made me feel kind of almost seen in a way.
Yeah. And it's really nice being able to, when you then get those experiences as an adult. I was at an event last night, and being able to just be around all people, and you're all doing different things, and you're all seeing different things. And some people have gone off to rooms, they've got the blinds down because they want a bit of privacy, but other people have got the blinds up, and it's just, yeah, okay, it's not really my thing to go. I'm not really a voyeur. It depends who it is. That's just how it is for me. And yet it's kind of nice that I can kind of have a peek in and go, yeah, cool, fair dues, you do you, and not feel weird about it. But also, if it's like my friends kind of almost celebrate it, and also having that ability to bounce between different groups and different scenes, and just be really fluid in the connections that I'm having, and not drawing this line of, well, I can't do that with that person because it's sexual. And for me, that has been really freeing. And I feel, my therapist said to me probably about a year ago that something has really changed about me, 18 months to a year ago. And I think it's that I have really finally found who I am from an authenticity point of view. I am living authentically. I am living unapologetically, with being, pansexual and polyamorous and kinky, and it's just I love it. And there's almost this bit of me that it's kind of sad that it took me so long, knowing full well that there are people that discover it far later than me. I also know that if I tried to do it earlier, I wouldn't have been anywhere near in the right place to be able to deal with these things and deal with them sensibly, and I wouldn't be able to I'd have just burnt out much earlier, and I'd have ended up hating it all. Whereas now I have finally learned who I am, and I'm able to just live what for me is the best life. And if there's people that disagree with it or think it's weird or they don't like it, or that's on them, that's a them problem. And if it's to the point where they don't want to know me or be friends with me again, that's a you problem. I know who I am. I'm happy. I'm not gonna change things just because it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a very sort of self-affirming feeling to have when you get to a point where you kind of feel like this is me. I feel like myself, and I'm happy. Like, even if you didn't know what was missing before or what wasn't working correctly, maybe you felt like everything wasn't perfect, like, in yourself, and then you reach a point where you're like, okay, this is me. I fucking love it. I'm happy.
I always felt like something was missing, or I was broken. Like, always felt like there was a hole in me, and I just couldn't work out what it was that I needed to be able to feel this, like I was whole. I just couldn't find it. And it was only when I started exploring, I found out about this and exploring this. So I'm really grateful to my ex and really good friend who I've known for many years for introducing me to all of this, because I wouldn't have, maybe I would have found it eventually, never say never. And I wouldn't feel whole. I feel whole, and I feel secure. And that was something that I never ever thought I would ever feel. And so it's really nice to have that.
Yeah, so I think that's the sort of thing which I think is really important for people who are newly exploring non-monogamy, to hear that, it's not just like necessarily people doing this just for a bit of fun or just for a bit of different, or, you hear about people that, like, they want to spice up their sex lives or whatever. They're like, it's not necessarily about that. A lot of the times it's not. It's actually about finding the pieces of the puzzle that you're already missing, that you need to feel whole. You just didn't know they existed, or you didn't know where to find them until now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, so following on from that, I've got a couple more questions. I'll try and get through them
I'm sorry.
a little bit quickly.
If you can't tell, I can ramble for days, so feel free to cut bits.
You're not the only one, and it's fine. And to be honest, the more content we get, the better, and especially when it's things which I think are important for people who are newly exploring to hear. So we're all good. So I will ask, is there anything, if you could go back in time to when you started non-monogamy 3 years ago, is there anything you would do differently based on what you know now?
Well, I'll do this.
So my reason for asking this is for anyone who's listening who is newly exploring non-monogamy, that maybe are going to do things a certain way because it feels right, but you're actually thinking, no, I did do it that way, and in hindsight, that wasn't good. I shouldn't have done that. Those first few months, I should have been doing this instead, or I should have not done that. I should have been doing it differently.
See, from fear of people being like, oh, well, you're clearly not that very self-aware or reflective. I did a lot of temperature checking. I spent a lot of time doing research and talking to others and finding things. I think probably I wouldn't change it because I have a good friend from them, and be aware of the intensity of your feelings. Obviously, be my warning. Because one of the first people that I really started to connect with and play with, who their version of E&M is that they don't have additional romantic relationships, is I mean, you can't really help that natural feeling, but I very quickly was like, I'm definitely feeling romance this person. And I didn't really communicate it very well, and I kind of held it back because I didn't want to. I was worried about losing this friendship and potentially this play partner I had, and it didn't come to a head in the sense that it got horrible or anything. And we're still friends, and we still talk to this day, and we'll still occasionally play, which is really nice. And I do wish that I had been more honest and upfront faster in that, because I was just so hung up on this fear of losing people or being rejected, which was very much wrapped up in my own insecurities, which I have had to work on quite hard.
Yeah, that's really understandable. And actually within that, you kind of answered what was going to be another one of my questions, which was if someone, it's a bit of advice you would give them, and I guess that would be it for you, would be to be honest with your feelings.
Yeah. And be honest with somebody, and be honest with the people that you're playing with, because if you're hiding those feelings or things, it will eventually come to light, and it often comes to light in a way that's not nice.
Yeah.
Particularly if strong feelings start to get involved, and you start to feel like you have a real connection to this person. And I don't necessarily even mean romantically. You can have a real strong connection with someone that you're submitting to, or you're being or you're dominating over. You can really build this connection, and if they know, or that your feelings are in contrary to what the other person lives or how they like to, whatever is for them, then you just have to, as terrifying as it is, as hard as it is, you have to, otherwise, it can just go really wrong, and then you can risk really just losing relationships and things ending up being really awkward and uncomfortable, and that's not fun.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think that's really good advice, which is probably something that most people don't think about or don't hear about when reading up or listening to podcasts or reading books or anything when they're first learning. So I think that's a really good bit of advice to give. So last couple of questions. Are there any particular myths about non-monogamy that you think are important to debunk?
I don't want to have sex with everyone.
Yeah, that's been a common one.
I'm not greedy. And I was like, I think I kind of want to get away from some of the monogamy myths. Like, one person doesn't have to be everything. We don't have, you know, our friends, for example. We don't sit there and find a best friend and go, right, that's it. I don't need no more friends. Because we've all got different interests and things that we like and enjoy. And so, do you know what? This friend doesn't like going to museums. This friend does. Okay, so I'm going to, become friends with them because we have that in common. But that doesn't mean my relationship with my friends that, I like to go and drink cocktails with isn't any more important than the friend that I like to go to the transport museum with. And in the same way that, the partner that I might be dominant with, it isn't any more important than the relationship that I have with the person who we don't really kink play as much. We do occasionally, we switch, but it's not. I've kind of semi-forgotten the question, my rambling there, but I think I answered it.
No, it's completely fine. Yeah, I mean, you're right. All those myths of monogamy are an important thing, but also the thing of the non-monogamy myth that like people think like, oh, you can have sexual relationships with multiple people, therefore you want to have sex with everyone. I think like that's rarely ever the case, but people do seem to think that's what it means. Like, I'm like, well, no, actually, it means that I've got two relationships that's it. Some people, and there's nothing else. Like, I have sex with two different people, and that's it. How does that make me a huge slut that wants to have sex with everyone? Like, that is very rarely the case.
Yeah, and if you do that, if those are the only two people for like 10 years, how is that? This is not me slut shaming. I just mean the logic in that comparison or that comment is, how is, if I'm sleeping with 10 different people each year for 10 years, like how is that seen as fine because you're not committed to any of them? I mean, I say fine because if you're a woman, it's not fine. And then we're going down a different rabbit hole. But you know what I mean? But if it's the same two people for 10 years, that's wrong. But if it's different people over 10 years and you're not committed, it's fine. It's bizarre.
Or a different person every weekend, that's fine. Yeah, it's strange. Okay, so I have one last question for you, and we'll wrap this up, which is, if you could sum up non-monogamy for yourself in a couple of words, what would the words be? This is a question that always seems to stump people, but don't think too hard. I don't want you to plan too much. Just like, what are the first things that come to your head?
Affirming is definitely one that pops into my mind. Wholesome and connections would probably be the three words.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really good answer. So on that note, that brings us to the end of this episode. So thank you, Dana, for sharing your experiences with me.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It was really great talking to you, and I would happily have you back in future. So to everyone listening, if you would like to be a guest on our podcast, please send an email to spillingtheteapodcast@outlook.com and follow us on social media for all podcast updates. And I will see you next time when I spill more tea on non-monogamy.